Oh, it's good. You're gonna like it. Okay, I liked it quite a bit. I had one it's not really an issue, just kind of a, well, they've never done it that way before. That ought to be interesting. So, but I don't want to say anything until you've had a chance to read it. But dude, read it. It's good. It's good.
Okay.
So, all right. And I just went ahead and sent us live. So,
Yeah, it
I'm
popped
gonna
up on here.
continue. Yay. Okay, good, good. So, let's see. I don't know what the Dice Awards are. It looks like a Game Awards people.
Well, they did
Okay.
drop the new Marvel game this year, the new Marvel TTRPG.
Yeah, yeah, they have. They have. I've mentioned that.
So
But they're
maybe it's
talking
for
about
that.
they're talking about Marvel's Spider-Man 2 though.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, I don't. I'm going to the link right now because I'm like, what is this? What is the Dice Awards? Set to take place on February 15th, 2024, and the finalists have been revealed. Okay. And Marvel Spider-Man 2 has 9 nominations. That's a lot,
That is a
including
lot.
Game of the Year. It was nominated for Game of the Year at the annual Video Game Awards too, but like Baldur's Gate 3 took home everything. Like just about everything that it could take home, it took home. It was like, and I haven't played it yet, and I kind of want to play it, but I'm just
Oh,
gonna
I
say,
very much want to play it. I just don't have the time. But I
I
mean,
right.
I loved one and two, and I'm not surprised that three cleaned up. I think Spider Man 2 might be in one of those situations where any other year it would have won,
Well,
but
the thing
Baldur's
is,
Gate 3.
yeah, the thing is, there were so many The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out in 2023, and as someone who's played that game, I got to say that's pretty damn good too. So, I want to say hello to Sith Apple. Welcome, my friend. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. I'm still doing a little prep work for the podcast before we get started. So, Maenad and I are just kind of shooting the breeze and everything. So, one of the news items that I've got, since we'll be talking about it in a little bit, anyways, is that there's a box office tracking site that basically is projecting that Madam Web is probably going to have the worst opening box office weekend of any Marvel Sony project that has yet hit the screen.
I
And
mean,
so before we talk too much about it, I just are you planning to grab tickets to
of
that? Are
course.
we okay? All right. So because
Is,
I definitely want
are
to
the
see
tickets
this.
already on? When is it coming out?
I think they go on sale tomorrow. I think they go on sale on the 29th. I can't be certain about that. Um,
Monday
but
is pretty normal. I'll make sure to check the AMC site tomorrow.
yeah. Okay, so Marvel Spider-Man 2 nominated for 9 Dice Awards. 9. And I don't know what DICE stands for, and that news article hasn't told me yet, but that's still, I'd call that newsworthy. So, all right. So, moving on. See, I usually try to have the news done like on Saturday, but I had to work yesterday and I forgot to do a bunch of other things too. And so here we are. But
Design, innovative, communication, entertain, communicate, design, innovate, communicate, entertain.
okay. All right.
Formerly, they were the Interactive Achievement Awards.
Okay. So basically something for interactive media, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Sony wants Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back for Spider-Man 4. Kingpin may also appear. That's a rumor. Not the only the only time I put rumors in the news is if they just don't die. And I actually do have a rumor that didn't die this week, so I'm gonna mention that. Let's see. Marvel and Sony are at odds on Spider-Man 4 storyline. There's a surprise. I don't
Of course.
care. Uh, Yeah, see, like, oh, hey, they're fighting again. Guys, get it together.
It's
Um,
clickbait.
it is, and again, like, it's probably a rumor with some there's got to be something there because multiple sources are talking about it, but it's just like this is not until I have something a little bit more substantive than that headline, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're arguing about things. They always argue about things. When you're trying to do something this collaborative, there's going to be give and take. It's going to be a thing.
Yeah. Okay, so this one I think I will put in there, but apparently Vincent D'Onofrio has expressed a desire to fight Spider-Man. And I mean, I think just about any Spider fan out there wants to see Spidey versus Kingpin live action. So we're going to go ahead and put that in because, you know, that's something that he actually said. That's not a rumor. All right. And I think, still got two more to look at. Okay. Okay. Don't care. Don't care. 10 Spider-Man comics that nobody remembers. Don't care. Like, I have to sift through this stuff all the time. It's hilarious. Yes, Madam Web box office. I get it. Clashing over Spider-Man 4, disagreements. Okay, I guess I'll mention it that they're having disagreements. Mom and Dad are fighting, guys. Mom and Dad are fighting over Spidey again.
We're
Let me go
all
ahead.
so surprised.
Yeah. So let's see. Marvel and Sony clashing over Spider-Man 4
Okay, so Madam
plot.
Web is opens Valentine's Day.
Yes, yes, it does. So is it gonna? Does that mean it'll open on the 13th?
If it does, I can't go
Oh, okay.
on the
All right.
13th.
Well, okay. All right. Well, then I mean I can go on the 14th. Then that's fine.
Because
That's fine.
I
If
am
we're
Regina.
going to experience this trauma, we have to do it together. Okay.
I am Regina for my crew at Mardi Gras,
Uh
and
huh.
so I have to be on the Mardi Gras float on Mardi Gras, which
Okay.
is the
I
13th.
gotcha. All right.
Because
Let's see. Go
in a
ahead.
moment of supreme awkwardness, Valentine's Day and Ash Wednesday are the same day this year.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay. That's gonna cause a little bit of what the heck are we gonna how are we gonna amalgamate this? You
So
know.
going to see Madam Web may be our act of penance.
Uh, honestly, because I know that people are starting to talk about Madam Web, and people are saying, "Yeah, it looks like it's going to be bad. The predictions aren't very good." Thing is that based on the premise, I'm not, I'm not turned off by the premise. Like, I kind of like the idea. It's like, what if the Terminator took place in the Spider Verse, essentially? I have major issues with them making Ezekiel Sims the Terminator, but like overall, that concept doesn't really bother me.
I'm we'll talk about it when we talk about it.
Okay, that's fair. All right, I think I've got the news taken care of, so I think we can get started in just a second here. Let me just make some final edits. And thank you to those of you who are here early. I appreciate you being here. You may have noticed that it said that Aaron Garcia was going to be here as well. I will address that when we get started. But as you can see, he has not been able to make it today, and I know he has a very good reason for it. So, all right, so we are going to get started in just a second here. But hey, I've got Maenad here, and as we all hopefully know, Maenad, this is what? This is like your third episode
Third or
guesting on the
fourth.
pod. Third or fourth. Okay, all right. So they've got a handle on how we do things here. So, all right, let me.
I do want to warn you, I'm on call. It probably won't happen, but there is a small possibility that I'll have to duck out for a minute to do work.
Okay. All right, that's fine. If it happens, just say, "Hey, I got to go for a minute," and then I will improvise. So, and hopefully people will forgive me for that. So we're going to go ahead and bring up the script right here where I can see it. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that window. Wait, you know what? I might leave the window up in case I want to show, because I've got like two articles that I haven't closed, and you never know. I might decide to use them. So one of them is from Screen Rant, one of them is from Comic Book Resources. They're okay news sources, I guess. They're certainly not the best, but whatever. Okay. I know, I know. I mean, they both of those places can be very guilty of doing clickbait, but when I clicked on them, it was because they were like the fourth or fifth instance of someone talking about an item that I was like, okay, all right, I'll do this. So they got lucky. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, okay, so we're ready to go.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go, everyone. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Webline, a podcast about Spider-Man and his amazing world. Here, we discuss all aspects of our favorite web slinger in a fun, informal, but informative forum. I am your humble host, the Spidey Librarian, and it is time for another retro review episode. This week, we'll be covering The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the 2014 movie, directed by Mark Webb and starring Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Jamie Foxx, Sally Field, and Dane DeHaan. I think I pronounced his name correctly. So, all right. With me this week should have been two guests. Unfortunately, Aaron Garcia has had an IRL situation that has taken him away from the stream today, and we miss him very much. But with me is Maenad, my friend, Marvel trivia maven, and also IT guru. So, Maenad, how are things in your world, and how has 2024 been so far for you?
I mean, so far so good. A lot of work. And Echo.
Okay, so I haven't watched Echo. What have you thought of it so far?
Um, so I've only seen the first episode so far.
Okay.
But I'm really pleased with it. I got to see, and I should have looked this up before I said anything. But Echo, the actress, she was here in town at
Yeah.
Comic Palooza. And so I got to be at that talk, and she was just such a great person. She had an interpreter with her,
Mm-hmm.
but she was just so enthusiastic, and I was honestly surprised to find out that Echo was the very first role she'd ever had. Like,
Oh,
she was
really?
not an actress when she had never done really theater before at all. When the casting call went out, they were looking for a Native American woman with martial arts skills
Uh-huh.
and who was deaf. And her friends were like, "Look, this is not a big pool."
Okay, so what was she doing beforehand? What was
Martial
she doing
arts
before she...
and
So she was a
most
martial artist?
yeah,
Wow.
and
Okay.
other athletics. I think she was also in Special Olympics as a sprinter or
Okay. All
something.
right.
I
Wow.
know she was in Special Olympics for something. Because one of the reasons that she wasn't sure if she was going to go out for it, because the call did not specifically ask for an amputee.
Ah, okay.
And she wasn't sure if that was going to be a problem for them, but apparently it was not.
Oh no, apparently they were like, "Oh, well, we'll just incorporate that into the storyline too, you know." Yeah, no, I remember seeing her in Hawkeye, and I
Mm-hmm.
liked I liked the bits of like her involvement. I liked her relationship to the Kingpin. I also like that Hawkeye, or Clint, who had he's not deaf, but he's definitely he suffered some auditory damage because of his work with the Avengers. So like those two communicating with each other even while they were fighting was really cool.
You know, I the one thing I don't like didn't like about that is that in the
Hmm.
comics, Clint's hearing loss is very profound.
Right.
And he does sign in the comics. So
Depending on who writes him, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and specifically the Hawkeye comic was or the Hawkeye show was pulling very strongly from the iconic um
Matt
David
Fraction
Aj.
run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one did in fact have very famously an issue that was done entirely in sign.
Yeah. No, I remember. I remember. But well, I still need to watch Echo, and I probably will at some point. I think I've got one more episode of Marvel's What If to watch for season 2. Have you watched that?
No, I need to.
Oh, dude, it's okay. So first of all, I'm just gonna say this: second season is definitely better than the first. I
Okay.
thought the first season was good, although
I
apparently a
did
lot of
too.
people didn't. Apparently a lot of people criticized it. The thing is that the first season has a lot of downer episodes. Like they end on really
Yes.
dark downer notes, okay? And I'm okay with that, but my God, it just felt oppressive after a couple of episodes. This one, so far, everything has ended either on a higher note or at least kind of a neutral note, and I like that, but I also just love a lot of what they have done narratively with it this season. If you're a fan of Peggy Carter, and I know you are, then
Yes.
I think you're gonna be pleased with a lot of what you find during this season. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, anyways, welcome back to the podcast, and I'm gonna go ahead and get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way, and then we'll move on to the news segment. The Spidey Librarian Patreon provides access to my premium content. There's just currently one tier, the $5 Spider Society Citizens tier. I'm going to say that again, the $5 Spider Society Citizen tier, which gets members shoutouts on the Webline podcast and on my uploaded YouTube videos, a special role in the Spidey Librarian Discord server, Spider Society Citizen, and now live reaction content. I'm going to be soon uploading my first movie reaction video, which will be for The Amazing Spider-Man, with more Spider-Man and other movies like Jurassic Park to follow. You can also, for free on Patreon, vote for which movies I'll next be watching. That's right, you do not have to be a paying member to access movie polls. More roles, perks, and possibilities will arise as we grow and diversify. So join the Spidey Librarian Patreon today as we grow into a full-fledged Spider-Man community. Link will be in the description and show notes. The webline streams on Sundays at 2 p.m. Central Time on my YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe there and on your favorite podcast service, and leave us a like, review, and follow where appropriate. If you're on a service that doesn't carry the web line, let me know by shooting me an email at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, and I'll do what I can to get it pushed out to you. And finally, for those of you here on the live stream with us today, please be sure to thwip the like button and chime in with your perspectives in chat. But before we do a daring deep dive into our timely topic, it's time to dish on the latest spiderific developments with our knockout news segment, the Bugle Newsflash. And I tell you, I've got two rumors that would not die that you know just this last week. I normally don't like to report on rumors, but if enough different sources are talking about them, then I'm like, all right, fine, I'll put it in. So the first one, you like you like Hobie, right?
I love
Spider
Hobie.
Pug. Yeah. Well, apparently, the first rumor that wouldn't die this week was that Sony is apparently considering an R-rated animated Spider-Punk film. And I am not sure what to think about this. This is right now. This seems to be just in the rumor phase, but so many people, so many different places were talking about it this week that I'm like, all right, we'll mention it. I like Hobie, and I would think that that character, if he's gonna be doing some of the things that you might get an R rating for, like he's not a bad choice. He's not afraid to be shove a guy's face into concrete or something like that,
I mean, his comics arc is pretty freaking dark.
I haven't read it, so I wouldn't know. Please feel free to elaborate.
He is not one of the. He is willing to kill.
Right. And that was something that was brought up during Spider-Verse in 2014. That's why
Yeah,
Superior, I think, picked him for his team. So,
yeah, and he is he comes from a world where I believe Norman Osborn is like the fascist overlord of basically the whole world.
okay. All
Um,
right.
and he is a truly committed anarchist whose friends get killed. And I know he has a band, and he has because I know he basically, I think there's also a part in his arc where he fights Venom with his guitar.
Like blasting out, like
Yeah.
really. Okay. That's awesome, actually. So,
But yeah, but I believe multiple people die in his arc. Like
okay.
it gets pretty brutal at points.
Yeah,
So I
I
can
mean, like, I'm not crazy about the idea of an R-rated Spider-Man. You know, I know that I know there's a segment of people out there that want R-rated comic book movies for like everything, and I could see points where Spider-Man might do some R-rated things, but like to me, R rating just doesn't speak to the character. But Hobie,
ex-
I could
if
see
you're
it.
going to do an R-rated Spider-Man, it's going to be with Hobie. Like
Okay.
unless you decide to go for like noir and get as dark
Yeah.
as you could.
Yeah, and I mean he's rumored to have a show coming down the pipeline too, so we'll see. Of course, of course, so is Silk, and so far I haven't seen much on either show, but we'll see. All of these shows currently live in Rumorville. So okay, next news item: Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has been nominated for a Best Animated Picture Oscar. I think this is just from the department of, hey, there's a surprise. But honestly, I mean, I don't go to the movies for a lot of animated movie. Like I don't go out to the theaters for a lot of animated movies. So like I think Across the Spider-Verse is the only one that I remember seeing in the last year. There might be others that I've forgotten, but I don't go to the movies that often either. So I'm kind of wondering who they're up against. I didn't have a
Well,
chance to
like
look that up. So
Disney's major offering for this year, which I believe was called Wish,
okay,
flopped.
yeah.
It
Re-
flopped hard. Um, it was meant to be it was their 100th anniversary, or 75th anniversary, something like that. I can't remember. I think 75th anniversary, like homage to
Ooh,
their whole history.
I just found the nominees for animated feature film. Wish is not on there.
Oh no, I didn't expect it would be. Like Disney flopped hard. It was supposed to be like an homage, and it came out like a really bad pastiche.
Dang. The nominees, other than Across the Spider Verse, are the Boy and the Heron, which is looks like a Miyazaki
Miyazaki.
film.
Hmm.
Elemental, which I heard was pretty good, actually. I
I
seem to
Was
remember
that
that being decent.
Pixar?
I want to say so. Nimona, I have no idea what that
Oh, that
is.
was so good. I think that was a
Oh, is it?
Netflix one. You should definitely watch that.
I'll put it on the list of movies that I haven't seen, so that way we can vote on it.
Yeah.
um, and then Robot Dreams. I haven't heard of that one either. So, but
Nimona actually is originally an indie comic.
okay, all right,
So it
that's
is a
pretty
comic
cool.
book movie. And it was really, really good.
Okay, Nimona, and you said it's a Netflix movie.
I believe so.
I have to check it out. Okay.
Yeah, that now and
Um,
that's interesting because that did not come out in theaters, I believe.
okay. Yeah, well, I mean, apparently these days it doesn't have to, which,
Yeah.
yay. I guess if you would have looked for a silver lining about the pandemic, there you go, So, so many people just started watching movies on demand from home. So, you know. Let's see. Box Office Pro, a movie box office tracking website, has projected a disappointing opening weekend for Madam Web, the upcoming Spider-Verse movie that will feature four women who are they all have spider abilities, kind of like Spider-Man. Um, and they're saying that it possibly might be the worst opening weekend in Sony's Marvel movie history, and I don't know what to think about that. I mean, when it comes to buzz ahead of movies, I usually have like a couple of trusted resources that I kind of get a lot of my, like, if I haven't watched it yet, like my apprehensions or my confidence about an upcoming movie from. But those sites have never been 100% perfect. And then there's my own kind of like looking into the like what's going on and doing my own kind of research and seeing what I think about it. And sometimes I've been right and sometimes I've been wrong. But the thing is, like, you kind of take these things all together, and that's kind of how you're feeling about a movie before you see it. And I don't know. From what I've seen so far about Madam Web, I have like one major issue with one thing they've done so far, and the rest of it, I'm like, I'm just like, I'm kind of interested to see this. Like, I kind of want to know what is going to go on here. And it's like Terminator in the Spider Verse, which conceptually I'm kind of down with. I'm like, let's see where this goes. It'll all come out to the execution. So I don't know. I try to take things like this news with a grain of salt, but you know, everyone starts talking this way, and it becomes a bit of it becomes a bit
Self-fulfilling
difficult to filter it out.
prophecy.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
I
So
mean, I think on the one hand, it's suffering from the pre-decision we hate it review bombing that was the same thing that hit Captain Marvel, which was an amazing film.
yes,
But it is mostly women, and there's a
hmm
group of there are a group of people who are just going to hate it because of that. Um,
yeah, that's hard to get away from.
it is a Valentine's Day opening, which is not it's not a Valentine's Day movie kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure all the nerd couples are going to think it's great, but it is a Valentine's Day opening, which I think the only movie I can think of that did really, really well on a Valentine's Day opening was Deadpool. Um,
Hey guys,
and
Deadpool 3 coming out this year, so
and
that would,
also in another thing similar to Captain Marvel, there has not been much studio hype. Like I didn't until we were talking about it earlier. I didn't even know what day it was coming. I didn't know what day it was coming out, and
right. Yeah.
I pay attention to these things. So I think a lot of people have no idea that it's happening. And so again, there's some self-fulfilling prophecy to that of we've decided it's not going to do well, so we're not going to spend money hyping it so it doesn't do well.
Right. No. And I mean, that's a thing that has plagued a whole bunch of different movies. I think they did that with Wonder Woman, if I remember correctly. Did didn't they do that with Black Panther, the first one,
I
and the second one?
I don't. I mean, not the second one. They
Not the
definitely,
second.
but they there was definitely hype on the second one, and they knew that this like I heard a lot about Black Panther, the first one coming out, but then again, that might have to do with the 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 ground buzz,
Right.
because and Black Panther smashed its opening.
Yeah, it did.
Um, like it really smashed its opening, but again, Black Panther had a huge amount of ground buzz. Um,
Yeah. It just like it's funny because I remember just how much hype there was for, say, Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, which you would expect because that was basically building to something. But we get plenty of hype for Spider-Man movies, like you better hype, Peter Parker up at least, but
mhm.
then like we have things like this, and to be perfectly fair, like this has the this has the albatross of not being a mainline Spider-Man movie, just like Craven the Hunter has that same problem among possibly other things. So it's just like, guys, I know that promotion costs money, but like that's how you get word out. You can't rely on people like me and Maenad here to tell everybody because we can only do so much.
And the other thing is that, especially where live action is concerned, Sony's recent offerings have been spotty. I have
The the,
enjoyed
the,
the Venom movies,
the Venom movies
but
are okay.
then there was Morbius.
There was Morbius.
So I think there's also a certain amount of distrust in Sony's live action department.
Well, and I think that's something we're probably going to be discussing during when we talk about Amazing Spider-Man 2, because I'm just going to come right out and say it. In my view, Amazing Spider-Man 2 was where we really started to see the fingerprints of Sony execs on the movie, and that it was just kind of like, okay, you guys really need to stop and maybe let this go. But yeah, no, you raise a good point. So
And then there is the whole, I mean, everybody keeps talking superhero fatigue, superhero fatigue, superhero fatigue. And like we came into this committed. Like we were superhero fans before Iron Man, before the MCU was even a thing. But and we're going to stay loyal superhero fans well after the hype.
mm-hmm.
But I
Oh
do
yeah.
think that the moment we had there where superheroes took over the larger non-geek culture may be slowing a bit,
Yeah,
and that
and I'm okay with that. you know
these movies may start have and that the problem is that when you've had something that's been so successful, when Marvel got accustomed to billions of profits on every film, when that starts to fade and go back to a more normal environment, you suddenly get, oh, it's a flop. Comparing, let's say, with what happened with the Marvels and Aquaman 2. They had roughly similar openings
Yep.
and made and Aquaman 2 was a triumph for DC and the Marvels was a flop. And while some of that had some gendered bias in its reporting, I think some of it also was DC just doesn't have the expectations that Marvel does.
That's a good point. That's a good point, and it's one that I do agree with. And it's it is things are just not. they the situation is always evolving. You always have to kind of keep in mind the context in which the movies arise and stuff like that. And so parsing it out can be really difficult sometimes. But I mean, hopefully, I'm hoping, and I've had my hopes here dashed before, but I'm hoping that Madam Web will be like this surprise success, and that people are going to be like, "Ah, this is pretty cool," you know. That's what I want for this movie. We'll see what happens. And for those of you that don't already know, Maenad and I are friends. We both live in Houston, Texas, and we go to a lot of Marvel and just superhero movies together because we bonded arguing over the Marvel Civil War. So like this is kind of
Comics
one of
version.
those
This was
like
actually before the films came out.
yes it was. So anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next news item. Let's see. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 has been nominated for 9 DICE awards. And let's see, Maynard, you said that used to be, what was it called?
The
Oh, God.
interactive, hang on, let me bring this back up. It was previously the Interactive Achievement Awards, and
There we
it
go.
is now the Design, Innovate, Communicate, and Entertain Awards.
So basically, yeah, awards for interactive media. And one of the categories that it has been nominated for is Game of the Year, and probably a slew of other things that I have not looked up. But this so I've of the two of us, I'm the one that's played this game, and I can tell you from personal experience, and yes, I will cop to being biased here, but it was basically Insomniac's take on the Venom origin story and the story Kraven's Last Hunt. And I have to say, they took these two very, you know, award-winning stories from the comics and really mixed them up together in a way that really worked. I won't say it was perfect, but I will say that the story really did stand out to me. So I'm really excited about that. I want this game to win as many awards as it possibly can. It's already been successful, so it's not like I'm worried about it making enough money to get like a sequel. We know it's going to get a sequel, but it's just like when it got beaten for the Game of the Year awards at the at the annual video game awards. I mean, one, I've never played Baldur's Gate 3. I hear it's amazing, but I have played The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and I will say that 2023 was definitely a year for video games that had really, really strong narratives and really, really strong kind of gameplay mechanics. A lot of good stuff came out there, so I'm happy that those games are getting their recognition, but kind of wanted my boy to win, like you always do.
I mean,
But
yeah, I don't play video games. I do play tabletop RPGs. So Baldur's Gate 3, which basically has a D&D 5th ed mechanic, and is in fact one of the games that when I have time, I will play because as somebody who can't play video games, it has a mechanic that I can play. There is no, I can't figure out just how to move my body in this space problem with that, which makes it very accessible to people who can't play other kinds of games.
right,
But this is definitely a year for it is an honor to be nominated
yeah,
because
no,
there is
I would agree.
so much good stuff with huge followings, with huge franchise weight behind them, which does make a difference. So yeah, it's been a big year.
It has, and I mean, I could go into it because like it's been a big year for video games, but then you've also got a lot of major companies laying off entire swaths of their video game development department, and it's like, yeah, it was a good year, but it also wasn't a good year, and it's continuing into 2024 with the layoffs too, unfortunately. So, but we're not a video game podcast, so I won't go into it too much. Vincent D'Onofrio has recently reconfirmed that he definitely would like to fight Spider-Man at some point. And I mean, this is an easy bit to report because it's just like, who doesn't love Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin? And yes, while I am aware that Kingpin is, technically a Daredevil foe, Spider-Man had him first. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Um, um, no, but I mean, he's kind of a classic Spider-Man foe. He still likes to, put some dirt in Peter's eye whenever he gets the opportunity to. And those two still kind of like to stick it to each other in the comics. And so, I, for one, would really like the Kingpin to be like the main villain in the fourth, like Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. I would love that. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I've got my fingers crossed.
I'm sorry, it just occurred to me how funny it would be if they were both in it because Charlie Cox doesn't remember being Charlie Cox's Daredevil doesn't remember being Peter's lawyer because he doesn't remember Peter, but Peter remembers
Ah,
him being his lawyer.
that would be pretty funny, actually. Um, I heard that I don't know how official this is, but I heard that when the snap occurred or when the blip occurred, um, apparently Daredevil was one of the people that was not snapped. And with his enhanced senses, he basically heard like everyone's heartbeat stopping, like all at the same time.
Oh
Yeah,
god.
yeah. It was kind of one of those whoa.
Oh, that
That's
would be
that
some trauma.
that would be terrible. And as much as I love Matt, I would kind of want to see that actually.
Well, but I mean, if you think about it in a way, that's he saw everybody, he heard everybody's heart stop at the same time that everybody else was seeing everybody do the.
Yeah,
So I guess his wasn't more traumatic than everybody else's. It was just that was how he experienced the trauma that everyone experienced.
yeah, that's a good point. And I did like because they've shown how people experience the blip in different ways. Like they showed they gave a rather comical example, like in Spider-Man: Far From Home, and then like in WandaVision, you had Monica, like her experience of the snap and then coming back, and then in Black Widow, you had Yelena's experience, and like they all
Mm-hmm.
filmed them in different ways that I thought were really interesting. Like, and
And yeah,
go on.
no, you mentioned the ones in Far From Home, but I was thinking about the whole band coming back all at
Hmm.
once.
Yeah.
You know,
No, it was it's an interesting thing, and um again, I love my tangents, so we're wandering away from the point a bit. But again, yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio has said yet again, hey, if you guys want to put me up against Spider-Man, I'm okay with this. And I just have to say, Sony, Disney, Marvel, whoever, dude, do what this man asks, please. Like, you're going to have fans that will love you if you do that. So, and speaking of Marvel and Sony, final bit of news right here. Apparently, Marvel and Sony are clashing over the plot for Spider-Man 4 and they're fighting. And I don't know. Like, this is one, what was it, 10 years ago? I lived in a world where I was resigned to the fact that we were probably never going to see Spider-Man in the MCU. Like, that was just how it was. Okay. Then the leaks happened, and then Captain America Civil War happened, and, rejoicing all around, and we got the Spider-Man movies. But this is just kind of one of the things when, you've got two kind of parent studios fighting over what the kid is going to do, very literally in some senses. And I don't know. I again, this is yet another one of those rumors that wouldn't die. It kept popping up on my news feed this week, and so I'm fairly confident that they both know that there is a lot of money that they would be leaving on the table if they decided to scrap this. So what I think is going to happen is they're going to bicker like they always do whenever these things happen, and they're eventually going to decide we like money, and they're going to find a way to make it happen. Maynard, any takes on this?
No, you're absolutely right. Um, there's there's just they are going to argue, they are going to fight. I'm honestly a little confused at this point, since the what Sony's dog in this fight is, in a certain way, because while they have the rights and they want as much money as they can pry out of Disney for the rights, which, I mean, it's Disney, you're going to try to take them for as much as you can, because they've got it. But like, they don't actually have any story arcs with Spider-Man in them, unless they try to actually bring him into like the Venom things. And they clearly, like with the last, that little teaser bit at the end of Venom 2, they've clearly said, okay, well, these are two different universes.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, no, it's true, and I don't know. I see, because I'm a Spider-Man stan. But like I see so much opportunity ahead if they decide to do like another trilogy. So much that was just set up by No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
You've got you could have like, okay, so no one remembers who Peter is, including MJ. You could have the Kingpin show up. Hell, they could have had Craven show up if Sony would get its head out of its rear end. You could have the Venom symbiote. You could have Black Cat before he gets back together with MJ. You could have so much stuff going on that is direct. That happened in the comics,
And
and you know
now that
it's
you've
just like,
got a cut off poor Peter living in the like even poorer than usual Peter, having to make his own way, living in a shitty little apartment because he has nothing. He's in a prime position to, like, that apartment being in Kingpin's territory, and there you go. Like, it's
yeah,
it's right there. And yeah, there's so much room for an older, more adult Peter, but at the same time, you've also got, he's about the same age now as say Kate. So, with Marvel pulling the whole Young Avengers thing out, he can be tangentially related to that. I wouldn't necessarily have him be a member of it, but he's in the right age range to be active with those heroes and in a world with those people.
I mean, you're not wrong, and I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Peter, at least working with, like, assuming they get the Young Avengers going like that. That'd be pretty cool. Um, but yeah, I want to. I really think I would like a Spider-Man movie that is just basically disconnected from all of that for like one movie.
True.
Just let him do his own thing for like one movie. I don't know if
Fair.
it'll happen, because Marvel, they thrive on connectivity, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. All right, and that's all the Spidey news for this week. Now, let's move on to the feature, our retro review of 2014's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. All right, and let's see. We've got visits from Sith Apple is here, and I've said hello to him. Hello to Leia Rose, welcome. And then we've got Karma in the chat right now, and they've got some things they want to talk about. Can we talk about how Amazing Spider-Man 1 had the best Flash Thompson? Actually, you know what? I'm gonna agree with you, actually. Unfortunately, Flash Thompson didn't show up in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He did have some scenes, but they cut it. They cut his scenes from the second movie. But I think the thing that I liked most about Flash Thompson in that movie is how little he was used, because it gave you a lot of room to kind of emphasis, like think about like what his arc was, because he starts off kind of bullying Peter. Peter kind of takes it, and then like by the end of the movie they seem to be kind of like friendly and broy, and like, hey, you're not such a bad guy. And I kind of like that. I did not like, I know everyone loves Joe Manganiello. I believe that was who played Flash in the Tobey Maguire movies, and he was fine, but like he had no arc. He had
Yeah.
no arc whatsoever, and they gave this Flash Thompson an arc, and that is one of the things that I liked about the first Amazing Spider-Man movie that maybe I didn't talk about during the last review. So
Yeah. And if this movie hadn't been what this movie that we're about to talk about, if it hadn't been what it was, and they actually got the third a third Andrew Garfield film, I would have liked to have seen that Flash be the Flash that has Venom.
that would have been pretty cool, actually. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. He's also, let's see. I'm gonna get hate. The Amazing Spider-Man series had more potential than MCU Spider-Man. I disagree. And also, when this movie came out, The Amazing Spider-Man 1, people were complaining that Andrew Peter is attractive. The dude is he's a male model. I mean, come on. Yeah, I know Peter can be cute, but it's
He's
Andrew
so
freaking
cool.
Garfield. Yeah.
It's not just that he's
Like,
cute, he's so cool.
okay, yeah, and he goes on to say, yeah, like, what did we forget about the old comics? Peter had a harem and was good looking. Okay, first of all, I'm going to say that Peter has never had a harem. All right, he has had attractive women come in and out of his life, but he also gets in his own way relationship wise, and I'm just going to say he's lucky that he's got MJ, or at least he did when he was married to her. Don't get me started on that, but like basically, she was a lot of people say she's like the one true pairing, kind of thing. And yeah, but I mean, like, as for
Let's
a
face it,
harem,
Tiger, you hit the jackpot.
yeah, that. So MCU Flash Thompson doesn't even look like a bully. Toby Flash looks too old. Toby Flash looks too old. Will agree. Yeah, MCU Flash Thompson, he was not like a physical bully. He's like the guy that's gonna grow up, be a lawyer, and use that to bully people. That's kind of the
I
impression that I got from that guy.
I
So
think that is a generational thing. I
I
think
agree.
The
Hmm.
MCU Flash Thompson is what a Gen Z bully looks like. He cyber bullies. He gets his army of followers after somebody because he's always streaming,
Yeah.
and clearly very social media active and very social media popular. And I think that is sort of what a Gen Z bully looks like.
Did you see in Far From Home like how like when Peter got those glasses from Tony Stark, he could see like people's text messages. Did you see some of Flash's?
Oh, his parents are terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like wow. So there's kind of a reason for the way he acts, and yeah, I get it. So all right,
And it's
okay, all right.
definitely makes sense for the desperate approval seeking that is the
Yes,
core of that character.
yes, no, absolutely. Okay, all right. So we're gonna start talking about the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, I'm gonna start this conversation off by being blunt. I did not like The Amazing Spider Man 2 when I watched it in theaters. I remember being excited to watch this movie. I dressed up when I went out to the movie theaters. I think I ended up getting into a minor argument with the people that run the theater because I was wearing a mask. Um, Everyone in the audience was pumped up for this movie. I remember I wanted this movie to succeed. I was ready for it. I remember being excited to watch it. And then as the movie unfolded, I was just struck by a number of narrative and pacing decisions that it kept pulling me out of the story. When the credits rolled on this movie, I remember doing one of those quiet, slow pity claps that you do at the end. I was like, I literally, I'm pretty sure I was sitting in the theater exactly like this. Like, I'm pretty sure that was me. I'm pretty sure I just reenacted myself 10 years ago. Okay. Um, I just remember thinking, wow, was this supposed to be enjoyable? Now, I recently did a rewatch of it just a couple of days ago. I've got it on my Vudu account, so I went ahead and watched it again for the first time in a few years. All right. And while I have since discovered some moments that maybe I didn't appreciate as much back then when I first saw it, it still remains a difficult film for me to fully get behind. Maynard, I want to know, what was your initial impressions of The Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Um, I think they were very similar to yours. I remember seeing a still before the film came out, and it had Gwen Stacy in the outfit, the
That
page
outfit.
accurate outfit that she dies in,
Yes.
and going, oh God, they're doing it. And then as the and so my entire experience of the film the first time I watched it was, are they or aren't they? Are they or aren't they? And there being moments where I thought she was going to make it out of the film alive, where I thought they were going to change the story, and they didn't. And
Which, to be fair, I don't have a problem with
no,
Gwen
I don't have
Stacy's
a
death
problem with
alone.
I don't have a
You
problem with
know,
that alone. I do kind of feel like I think I would have rather had an almost tumble to the inevitable as opposed to the maybe she'll make it moments. Um, Partially because I think some of the decisions made in that tumble or in that maybe she'll make it were not great.
mm-hmm.
And then I also think that yeah, the ending just really had me going like, wait, that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm sure we're going to get into as we go through this.
Yeah.
All right, let's just go with a plot summary real quick, okay? And Maynard, please feel free to just chime in if I forget something, or I don't know if you watched this recently or what have you, but
I did rewatch it relatively recently in preparation for doing this. Yeah.
okay. So Peter is basically he's still going around being Spider-Man. He is kind of living in the aftermath of Captain Stacy's death, and occasionally when he's helping out the police, he will see Dennis Leary, Captain Stacy, just staring at him like, "You are not doing what you promised me." And whatever you may think of that promise, I will say this: I liked that use of Dennis Leary. Like, I just him staring at Peter, I thought that was brilliant. However, that guilt basically causes him to still be wishy-washy about why he's if he wants to still be with Gwen, which causes, in my personal opinion, some stupid teenager issues that really I thought had been resolved at the end of the first film. And essentially, with all of that going on, there are things going on at Oscorp as well. Norman Osborn is finally dying, and he summons his son Harry to basically tell him, hey, here's everything I did. Maybe you'll get lucky, but you know, do your best and try to survive. Harry, as it turns out, is Peter's best friend from like 8 to 10 years ago, and basically their lives become intertwined with Peter's father having worked at Oscorp with Norman Osborn. They are seen in footage together. And Harry stumbles upon finding out essentially that Peter is been secretly put under observation and surveillance by Oscorp for a long time. Meanwhile, we have an electrical engineer, Max Dillon, who is badly treated at work, but is apparently brilliant and has designed a lot of the electrical grid that Oscorp uses to power the five boroughs. And basically, he gets mistreated by his boss on his birthday. And in trying to fix and trying to repair a situation, falls into a vat of electric eels, as Jamie Foxx put it in No Way Home, and becomes Electro. All of these different plot threads eventually convene to a really good fight at the end between Spider-Man and Electro. And after Spider-Man has finally dealt with Electro, along with dealing with whether he wants to be with Gwen, and then Gwen telling him that she may be going to England for a scholarship program opportunity, they band together. They manage to pull the plug on Electro, and then Harry shows up, figures out that Peter is Spider-Man, and basically we get a very quick reenactment of the comic book story The Night Gwen Stacy Died. Peter tries to save Gwen, he fails, and Harry is left to talk to his go-between from prison and Oscorp to basically try to manufacture new villains to use against Spider-Man. And that's where the movie ends. Maenad, how did I do? I know I stumbled in a couple of places there, but you know.
I mean, I think as an overall description, I'd say like that hits the major plot points.
Yeah.
Getting too many of those major plot points happens in some cases on a rewatch, some cases in a better way than I remember, in some cases in at least as bad a way as I remember.
Right.
Um,
What would you say some of the major themes of this movie are?
Responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
What is and isn't your responsibility?
Okay.
How people process rejection.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
I would also say in a lot of ways, survivor's guilt.
yeah.
I mean, all over the place. And and you know how that kind of guilt is just something that you know when you're in an occupation, a hazardous occupation, like being a superhero, you're probably going to be dealing with that a lot and regularly, you know. So yeah, power and responsibility is always a big one in the Spider-Man movies, and I, uh, I definitely think that you know Spider-Man, of course, is what you should do, and then of course the villains are usually what you should not do as well. So yeah, I I don't know. I do feel like the movie when it because I feel like if you don't have good themes, you're not going to have a good movie. You have to have something to say when you're telling a story. And I sometimes have a difficult time understanding what this movie was trying to say about a lot of these themes. I'm gonna mention the survivor's guilt one real quick because I feel like that one sets it up for me. You have what I felt again was brilliant. You had Captain Stacy showing up occasionally in Peter's vision, reminding him, "Hey, you're endangering my daughter, and you said you wouldn't." Survivor's guilt. And basically he survived when Captain Stacy didn't. And then it leads to, in my opinion, stupid decisions where it's just like, I keep seeing your dad. I don't know if I can keep seeing you. And it just kind of was, it was one of those things that I was just like, okay, well then what are we saying here? Like that if you if you have enough guilt, you're going to you're eventually going to do action A, which is dump Gwen. And then if you get tired enough of it, you're going to go back to action B. It's like a pendulum. It's like the Parker pendulum. And I don't know about you, but that really annoyed me. Like that whole like I don't know if I can be with you, because it sounded like at the end of the first movie he was like, best promises are the ones that you can't keep, and clearly they're together at the start of this movie, and I don't know. It felt like drama for the sake of drama, and I really had an issue with it. I don't know. What did you think?
I mean, I agree. I think it makes Peter look. I mean, I suppose it does make him look like a teenager.
You're not wrong.
He has an idea of what he thinks the right thing to do is, but it costs him personally a lot. And it also, to a certain extent, denies her agency.
Oh yes.
To a huge extent, it denies her agency.
Yeah.
And he has a very hard time deciding between which of those things is correct. But again, like it makes him look like an idiot, but it also makes him look like an 18-year-old boy.
You're not
He's
wrong
just
about that.
got the kinds of, like, one of the things that you frequently see with superheroes is you take a normal human struggle and you dial it to 11.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It just came off heavy-handed for me,
oh, it,
and
it was it was very heavy-handed.
yeah.
Um, and I wasn't a fan of it, like I said, but the only argument I can make in favor of it is, well, he is acting like a teenager.
Right. And sometimes verisimilitude and accuracy aren't pretty.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about the acting in this movie. I mean, I have a lot of issues with this movie. However, arguably for the most part the acting is not one of them. I've said it in the last review and I'll say it this time. Andrew Garfield is a superb Spider-Man. My issues with this movie do not include Andrew Garfield, and they don't include Emma Stone either. Those two are excellent actors. They do an excellent job with what they have, and they have excellent chemistry together. Of course, they were dating, but like it works on screen. In my opinion, they give Tom and Zendaya a run for their money in the "oh, aren't they cute" like department. They really do. Um, I don't know. Do you have anything you want to say about them in specific? Because like I'm gonna move to other people
I
after
think I
this.
agree. Like, they both do a really good job. The script is not their fault. Um,
Yeah,
and I
exactly,
think they
exactly.
sell the script that they got beautifully, given that it is the script that they got.
Right. Um, I liked I liked Sally Field in this one. I was so disappointed in the last movie in how the previous movie used Aunt May. I understand that it was mostly about him and Ben, because Ben is the one that has to get, he has to die. But Aunt May felt like a prop in that movie, and in this one, she is arguing with Peter. She is, they're bickering about the laundry. She's basically telling him, hey, look, you're my son. I'm the one that raised you here.
Yeah.
Like, this is a very kind of strong mother figure that I don't feel we only got like the barest glimpses of in the previous movie, and I'm so glad that Sally Field got a little bit more to do in this movie.
Yeah, that you're my boy scene is still even in the middle of everything else that's going on. That scene is deeply affecting.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it's beautifully played. It's raw, it's real. Um and also the frustration that she has with her brother and with Peter's or brother-in-law, and with
I
Peter's,
think so. Yeah.
yeah, kind of obsession. And one of the things I always had a little bit of a thing in this is that Peter is way more obsessed with his parents than he usually is in the Toby or in the Andrew Garfield films. In these films, he's way more obsessed with his parents than he usually is.
Yeah.
And her frustration with that and with them and her opinion that they did the wrong thing comes out very clearly.
And I feel like that is probably the best thing they could have done in order to combat the fact that they chose to focus so much on Peter's parents. I'm always going to have an issue with that. I think the first like 7 minutes of the movie
Mm.
involves Richard Parker and his work, and he and his wife trying to upload the thing before the plane crashes, and fighting that Oscorp guy on the plane and all that stuff. And at the end of that 7 minutes, I was just like, I could have done without all of this. I have no interest in this whatsoever. And I understand that they were trying to pick up on new characters and trying to differentiate it from the Raimi films. Like I understand that's what they were trying to do. I don't feel like this is the way to do it. Peter in the comics has almost never had hardly any interest in his parents, because his parents are Ben and May. And it's like, that's just how it is. And so if you're going to go for that story, you're going to have to do a lot more than this. And it
Yeah.
was just like, I just remember like on my rewatch, I think I paused it once the parent scene was done. So because I wanted to look at the timestamp, and I was like, this is 7 or 8 minutes that I you could have done without. I would have been a-okay starting without all of this. So, but yeah, you're right. May's response to that is not only valid, but it's their kind of little way of counterpointing that. Oh yeah, we did this thing. It feels like their apology for doing it. Which, if you got to apologize for something you did, don't do it.
Yeah, and it's not
So
like they're apologizing for something they did in the last film
yeah,
because they spent the 7 minutes on it in this film. I mean, they overemphasized it in the last film too,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. What did you think of Jamie Foxx as Max Dillon and then as Electro?
So on the rewatch, I actually realized that there are two levels that they're working with this character on.
Okay.
Because on the rewatch, I realized that yes, he is ill-treated by his coworkers. That's
Mm-hmm.
clear.
Mm-hmm.
He's a creepy guy. He had he makes up even before the eel thing. He is making up his own worlds, his own interpretation of every interaction. And I can I think in the years since we've had like a lot of conversations about the whole like the nice guy and some of those kinds of characters. And that's what he was in a lot of ways. Like he's ill treated, but I think in retrospect, some of why he's ill treated is because people are unnerved by him because he is kind of creepy. Like he's got his whole like wall back at his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that, like I said, is even before he is like when Spider-Man saves him, before he has the Electro thing, before that happens, he develops an entire world in his head. He has a about being Spider-Man's best friend because Spider-Man knew his name and saved him that one time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
he latches onto that to a very creepy degree. And I think that
Oh
is
yeah.
an important part of his villain story is that he's not just a guy that people are mean to.
So my impression of what they did with Max, because everything you're saying makes perfect sense. Um, and yeah, a lot of the a lot of the isolation or the slings and arrows that he endures could be at least in part because of how he is. But my big issue with this, have you seen Batman Forever?
Which one was that?
That was the one with Jim Carrey as the Riddler,
I don't
Tommy
think I
Lee
did.
Jones as Two Face.
I think I skipped that one.
Okay,
I'm
so
not a big Jim Carrey fan,
he
and
he Jamie Foxx, his Max Dillon to me was basically Jim Carrey's Edward Nygma before he became the Riddler. He was he was similarly he was a weird egg. Um, he was highly obsessed with a particular person, and then when faced with a disappointment regarding that person, basically becomes a supervillain. His coworkers didn't like him, and it was all very kind of like zany and weird. And if you thought about this in the context of putting this person in real life, this person would be a complete and total creep. And I was just like, guys, you didn't need to trot this old trope out again. Like, I like the idea that Max Dillon is he is a generic enough person that you could have cast anyone to be him, and that gives us the opportunity to cast Jamie Foxx, who happens to be black, as someone who has been white in the comics because his his race doesn't really matter. It's not tied to who he is as a character. So then, why do you go and you bring out this like you said, it's kind of nice guy ish, persona, and slap it on this guy, and then you give him what was it, bad teeth and a glasses and a comb over, I think, like why would you do that? First of all, Jamie Foxx is a cool looking dude. Say what you want about his conduct, but like he didn't get any of that until he became Electro, and it was just like Jim Carrey changed when he became the Riddler as well, and it was just like, why are you doing this? Why are you copying this this character, this trope? I don't know. It's one of those things that's stuck in my craw about the character. I thought Electro himself was pretty cool. I thought when the movie started I was going to have problems with the color palette again, and I feel like they kind of almost overcorrected because, like, man, Electro is like he's blue and he's and Gwen Stacy's outfit is very bright and vibrant, and Spider-Man's costume has changed. Everything looks a lot more Ultimate Comics. And but yeah, I don't know, like Max Dillon, I had issues with. Electro, I was a little bit more on board with. I thought he was a pretty genuine threat altogether.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking more at like I think who he is as a person
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change very much. I think that's the biggest
Oh
thing
no, yeah,
is that who he is as a the first time I think I felt like the first time I watched it, I think I had a bigger feeling that who he was as a person changed more. And going back and watching it, I realized he didn't.
no, the
That
mask just comes off
yeah,
basically. Like, yeah,
that who he is as a person stays very consistent. And so I liked that better when I realized that.
yeah.
Um
What? Okay, let's talk about Harry. Let's talk about Dane DeHaan. All right. Um. So here's the thing. I feel like Dane DeHaan is in a similar situation to Andrew Garfield, and he doesn't have as much room to make the kinds of he doesn't have as much of a chance to correct for the material that he was given. I thought the decision to make Harry and Peter best friends in this movie was stupid, and I will die on that hill. Okay, I will say this for Dane DeHaan though. I will say that when he and Peter first met in the movie and they're talking, okay, that Dane DeHaan is a good enough actor. He and Andrew Garfield both are good enough actors that they don't quite do it, but they almost bring people over to the whole, okay, all right, they're long lost friends kind of thing. Almost, but that is just such a big gap. I mean, like, Harry doesn't even get a mention until this movie, and it's just like, where did this come from, you know? But with that said, Dane DeHaan's acting, I don't have a problem with. I felt like he did as good a job as he could with a lot of the material that he was given.
I feel like this was a second movie. This as a second movie didn't have the first thought it had a different first movie than it had.
Yeah, I would agree.
And honestly, if they were going to spend 7 minutes on a flashback, it should have been focused on little Harry and little Peter as children, possibly hiding from Norman. Peter being a protector to Harry, his safe space when they were kids.
That is an excellent point,
Their
and yes,
separation when Harry gets sent off to boarding school, maybe having that be right at the same time that Peter's parents die. If they had spent those 7 minutes on that relationship, I think they could have saved some of the later stuff that was in the film.
mm-hmm.
Also, Norman was barely in the first film, and suddenly he's dying in this creepily deformed way. And like telling Harry, this is going to happen to you. It's already starting. Like, dude, you are at you. The other, and that is another thing is like Harry spirals super fast. I'm like, this has to happen tomorrow. I'm dying. Like,
Yeah,
dude, your dad had another 20 years.
yeah.
You've got time.
Oh yeah. No, no, no. And that is actually an excellent point about the whole flashback. Like if they could have replaced that with that, no, I agree. That like establishing Peter and Harry knew each other as children in flashback really would have helped save that part of the narrative, you know.
Yeah, and there's just they just they go for, and this is a problem I've had with other films recently that I'm not going to mention. Um, they go for an emotional conflict based payout that they haven't put the friendship into.
Yep.
So when the the spiral happens, it happens too fast,
Mm-hmm.
and it happened. Everybody is acting like this is extremely jarring when you're like, I mean, I'm not sure what you expected here. Um,
Yeah.
so they try to get a payoff that in the comic for a moment that in the comics had huge amounts of build up to it, huge amounts of history. And they try to hand wave and go, oh yeah, all that history, just take that as read and let's go from here.
Yeah. No. And I think that's again that's one of the first signs that I will say that this was the result of executive meddling. I feel, this was, we want to get Green Goblin in, but we don't want it to be the same Green Goblin, so we're gonna kill off Norman Osborn in this movie, and we're gonna make it Harry instead.
I
And
mean, and I get it. Being intimidated by trying to replace Willem Dafoe's performance, I would be intimidated too. Like
yeah,
that was a masterclass performance.
yes, but you don't hire an actor like Chris Cooper for Norman Osborn and then kill him off. And
You
and I
barely even
think,
saw his face.
yeah. Well, the thing is, Lewis, I think you guessed it with him last time. He
Yeah.
said, he told me that they had originally planned to do a third Spider-Man movie like this, and that Norman was going to come back, and that we were going to find out that Chris Cooper's Norman Osborn was going to be like some kind of head in a jar kind of like version of the Green Goblin. I don't know. Like it was news to me when he told me. I was like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, I haven't heard that, but I could see them doing that based on what I've seen from this movie. And yeah, I don't know, but yeah, you like why would you hire Chris Cooper, who is a pretty good actor? Like I've seen him in a lot of stuff, and he's just like, yeah, we're gonna hire you for like these two scenes, and then you're killed off. Like I don't know, it didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and
No.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, like for the one scene that Chris Cooper has with Dane DeHaan, he does a good job. Dying old man. These two hate each other, but here, this is what I can do to try to save you. Like I'm okay with it. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and underuse a star like Chris Cooper, it's your money, you know.
I mean, and they also like one of the things that's always been interesting with Harry and Peter as best friends and is that Harry has a very conflicted relationship with Norman. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
Norman is dismissive and abusive, but Harry also usually kind of idolizes him as well. And
Yes.
so he ends up in this very conflicted, gee, that's not a character any other Marvel characters have a situation like. Um,
For those of you who are listening audio, Maenad pointed over her head at the Iron Man statuette behind her on her background. So
but yeah, it's I mean, it's a relationship that Marvel has set up before, often enough that it kind of makes me wonder about either Stan Lee's father or somebody else that Stan Lee knew. Um, but yeah, it's a thing that they do, and they did. This was just more of a old man, I hate you kind of like.
yeah,
It doesn't have that conflictedness, which makes the whole like, and it doesn't really. His becoming Green Goblin isn't taking up a mantle because Norman never really was Green Goblin in this
right,
film. So
right.
there's that legacy aspect just gets wiped out, and it's just like, well, this is a choice you made, like
Yeah,
apparently all on your own.
yeah. Again, I mean, in discussing the acting, we're inevitably discussing the writing as well, and yeah, they made some choices here. And again, it's like we want to be different from Sam Raimi's movies. Well, okay, you succeeded, but now you made this bed and you have to lie in it. And unfortunately, there are just some decisions that I'm just like, why? Why did you do this? You know.
But yes,
Uh,
since you were
Go
talking
ahead.
about the acting, I will go back and say I think that the actor did a good job with what he had. He had what he had.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Karma is asking, did you guys read my messages? Sorry, I was doing something. We read some of them at the beginning of this, so but we're just kind of keeping the discussion going. So I guess the next thing I want to talk about is cinematography and special effects. Honestly, I don't have a lot to say about these. I feel like the first movie I had issues with the color palette. It was way too dim. I think you were around for that discussion. This one, it was like that at first, particularly when it was emphasizing the parents' plot. But then I feel like when it came back to Peter, and especially during the Spider-Man portions, it's like they got the notes from the first movie, and then they almost overcorrected. Like it was, wow, this is really bright and noticeable. Electro is very blue, and Gwen's costume is very bright and everything. I don't really have an issue with it. It was just really noticeable, and I feel like it did kind of pull me out of the story sometimes. But special effects. I mean, we had some pretty good special effects from Electro. I thought those were fun. I felt that if I want to talk about the special effects, there's just the one scene that I really want to talk about is when Peter first meets Max when he's Electro, and Max lashes out, and there are a bunch of people, and they're like about to run up some stairs, and they're all about to grab these metal railings, and Peter has to throw out like a whole bunch of different webs and keep himself off of any metal to avoid being electrocuted. And like I felt like that was a very intricately done scene that was just like, wow, okay, that was cool. It was like, but it was a bunch of slow motion. It was a bunch of uh coordination and movement on the actors' parts and everything. But like aside from that, I mean, I got a lot of kind of the standard fare that you expect from a lot of Spider-Man movies these days. The web swinging is fun and dynamic. You have you have really cool fight scenes with Electro like flying everywhere that Peter is to try to fight him. And I mean, even some of like the practical effects, like the makeup and everything for Harry and Norman, were pretty good. Like if you took a close look at Norman, you could see that his skin was actually like starting to turn green and mottled, and like it looked like they kept it dim for that reason, not to give it away. But if you look at it enough, you can be like, oh, he looks like he's turning into a goblin. So, but overall, yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this. Maynard, do you?
Honestly, hang on one second. Remember what I said about
Okay.
work things happening?
Oh,
Um,
okay. All right. That's fine. No, but I mean, like, I think when we go into a Spider-Man film, we expect a certain amount of things. There's a certain amount of web swinging, whipping, uh, you know, tying people up with webs. You usually get some good special effects centered around the villain, and that's kind of what we got here, and a lot of it worked really well. I thought the final fight with Electro was good, and yeah, but I don't have a lot to say about it just in terms of this stood out to me. I don't
I
know.
mean, I actually thought the cinematography was wonderful.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the same notes that I had from the first one. This is a comics panel.
Right.
This moment is a comics panel,
Yeah,
and
there is a lot of that.
the way they
Yeah.
moved between them, and some of the like, I remember they really leaned in on a swoopy camera that
Hmm.
in 2014 was not something we'd seen very much. I think some of the things about this film, we've seen them since, and so we don't remember quite how cool they were in 2014.
Hmm.
They also did a lot of really cool
Excuse me.
modeling. So there were moments where the whole scene kind of felt like it moved in and out of being a model for a moment. The people kind of developed this like smoothed edge look to them, and then it would slide into that smoothness and then slide back out of it, especially while it was doing those swoop around crowd scenes.
Right. Yeah.
That was really, really cool. In fact, I would honestly say that if there's one thing I liked the most about this movie, it was the cinematography.
Okay. All right. That's completely fair and valid. I mean, like, if you're going to do a Spider-Man movie, showcasing the visual effects is kind of one of the things that I mean, the story is really important too. But this is a superhero. He's capable of doing things that other people can't. Let's show it off. So I think that I get where you're coming from, and I don't know. Maybe I'm accustomed to it because I play a lot of the video games. The swooping camera thing. I mean, that happens when you're web swinging through the city. So maybe I'm just used to it, and just have never really noticed
I
it.
mean, go
But
back if we go back and look at the Tobey Maguire movies, they didn't
mhm.
have that swooping camera very often,
Yeah,
and
it
it
was
wasn't done
very
nearly as
occasionally.
well.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no. All right. Criticisms and praise. Okay. Um. So I have a list, but what I will say is that I mean, yes, I do have more criticisms than praise for this. And I will say that the criticisms do outweigh the praise that I have for this. But I will say also that I do have some genuinely, like, there were some genuinely joyful parts of this movie that really kind of worked for me. So before I get on my soapbox, though, Maynard, I want you to talk about, what are the things that stand out most for you about this movie, good and bad?
Well, I've already said that, like, my favorite thing would be the cinematography.
The cinematography,
Um,
yes.
I will say that overall, on a rewatch, I liked it better than I did the first time.
I will say that too. I will say
Um,
that too.
I think that one of the things that kind of falls into both categories is that in a world where Infinity War is a movie that happened, I am more, and a movie where Rogue One is a movie that happened, I'm less jarred by a downer ending.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And while this tried to have, and in saying that, I'm less jarred by a downer ending, the fact that this tried to recover from its downer ending in the way that it did to put just that little bit of hope there, I almost would have rather it left it in the down spot. Now, granted, the fact that it didn't get a third one would have really made that even worse.
Yeah.
But if they were convinced, if they thought that they had made a good movie and they thought they were getting a third movie, I would have said they should have left it in the aftermath of Gwen's funeral. That would have been the place to leave it. Maybe even in the word, the articles about nobody's seen Spider-Man. What happened to Spider-Man?
Right.
I
Yeah.
think they should have left him down there. Um, because I think it would have made the movie have a more, they paid for that sorrow. They didn't pay for the redemption.
I can understand that. I can understand that perspective, you know. Um, I guess if I had anything to say about that scene itself, I saw what they were trying to do in terms of linking the whole, like, you know, you've lost someone and here's like a final audio or something of them. But I felt like that was kind of gimmicky. Oh, so Trouble is sitting right behind me and I nearly crushed her. So
Don't squish the kitty.
I don't want to squish the kitty. She's been napping behind me this whole time. So um but yeah, like it felt like that was a gimmick, basically. It was like, this is gonna be our gimmick for these movies. And I'm just like, well, then who are you gonna kill off in the third movie for him to hear audio from? You know, like come on. I didn't care much for that. And I, you know, I think you're right in the sense that I almost would have preferred this movie to have ended on a down note, you know. But maybe they really had no idea if they were going to be able to make a movie after this one. I kind of feel like they felt like, we're Sony, it's Spider-Man. We're gonna make a third movie whether it's successful or not. Which, you know, I could see them being capable of that kind of arrogance, but I don't think that, um, you know, I think that just leads to bad decision making, when it comes to a lot of things. And again, I feel like this movie is an example of that. Um, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to start where everyone expects me to start. I'm going to tell you some of the things about this movie that I just felt were bad or could have been omitted or could have been changed, and then I'll move into the good stuff. So here's here's what I think. Like, here are the things that I feel are the biggest offenders for this movie. First of all, the focus on Peter's parents. It has never been interesting. It is just kind of one of those things where I'm like, why are you focusing on the storyline? When the parents came back in the comics, they were basically proven to be like clones or androids or something, and they have never been a truly important part of Peter's here life, basically. So that's one. Peter's guilt complex, of course, that did feel contrived given the way that the first movie ended, and I had issues with that. Max Dillon's characterization, I really kind of felt like that could have been handled in a more nuanced way, and again, I felt like they really aped from Edward Nygma in Batman Forever. The Peter and Harry friendship comes out of nowhere. Why? Why did you do that? And again, in retrospect, that 7 minutes on the parents could have been spent on Harry, and I'd have been less. I'd have had fewer problems with it. Um. Okay. I don't think we've discussed this one yet, but maybe a little bit. The Norman and Harry and Green Goblin story is just meh. It's like you said. We did discuss this enough. There is no legacy here. Like, yes, he's carrying on his father's work, but there is no mantle to assume. That kind of thing is huge in these types of stories. And I think in Sony's desire to differentiate Mark Webb from Sam Raimi, they just they just they just made bad decisions here. They're just like, yeah, no, we're going to do that. There are certain parts of these types of stories that you just don't omit, and they omitted them, and I have issues with that. Um, okay, this we didn't discuss. Peter's reasoning for deciding not to help Harry felt off, and I've always had issues with that because essentially Harry asks for Spider-Man, who agrees, comes and meets him, and Harry is like, "I need your blood," and Spider-Man's like, "I don't think that's a good idea. I'm trying to protect you," and Harry is like, "Okay, I'm." dying. Like, this has basically been confirmed. I am dying. If we try this and I die, it's not like the problems are compounded here. And, kind of based on that and the fact that, basically it was it was basically established that it had to be Peter, or it had to be someone from Richard's like blood or bloodline in order for it to work. And it's like, well, if you give Harry your blood, that sample is all working. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. I'm not a geneticist, but there is a possibility, I suppose, that it could work. And I was never fully on board with Peter telling Harry no. And I know the narrative expects you to be, but that alone isn't enough of a reason. I really never got that solid, this is the reason why we're not doing it, and this makes sense. And so that was a thing that stuck with me.
I think
Go on. Go ahead.
I do think that that goes back to the parent obsession, in
Mm-hmm.
that his parents died to keep this information out of, I mean, technically Norman's hands, but to keep this information away and secret. So I think that's where they were going with part of that he has this idea that this is so dangerous that his parents were willing to die and abandon him because it's too dangerous. Nobody can have this.
Okay.
And it doesn't make sense. I agree that it doesn't make sense. I think that's what they were going for, but I don't think they communicated it well enough.
Yes, exactly.
And I also think that it kind of gives the impression that Peter thinks that if he gives Harry his blood, Harry's just going to shoot it straight into his arm, like without doing any more science to it at
Mm-hmm.
all. If it's true that it would only work with his genetic bloodline, then what giving it to Harry should do is prove that it's not going to work, which
Okay.
should have been safe then. So I agree with you that, like, I don't think they set up a situation that was understandable.
Right. No, definitely. Probably my biggest issue with this movie is Gwen's death. I don't have a problem with Gwen dying. That is Gwen's, that's her canon event in a lot of ways. But that her death felt tacked on. It felt like it was an afterthought. And if you're gonna do the story the night Gwen Stacy died, you don't tack it on as a surprise boss fight after the big boss battle has happened. That's a story that frankly deserves its own movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I there were some things that I liked about that though. I liked that Gwen deciding to join him for the Electro fight made her death more about her than it was about him. You know, I liked that. I liked her claiming her agency, but and she pays for it, but I don't feel like the bill was fairly delivered. It was like she joined Spider-Man to do something dangerous, but she prevailed, and they took down Electro. And then all of a sudden, Harry swoops onto the scene. And I understand that death can be very sudden and death can be unfair. I get all of that. But narratively, this just this was sour grapes. This was just, this story is a hard enough pill to swallow for any Spider fan in general. If you're going to do that, then at least, give us some water to chase it down with or something. And that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Finally, again, another example of corporate meddling was the very end when Harry's like, okay, we need to start making villains. And it's very strongly implied that this is going to be the Sinister Six. Sony was openly discussing the fact that they were going to build to a Sinister Six movie, which I did not understand why you would do that. Um, and it was just like everything, the vulture, you saw his wings at the end there. It's like, oh, that comes from Osborn. Oh, Octavius's arms comes from Oscorp. It's that, I don't know, like everything revolving around Oscorp. I understand why the temptation would be there to do that, but kind of um subordinating your narrative to this expectation and moving things around so that you can tease all of this stuff, it it struck me as very blatantly commercial, and I did not care for that. I was like, no, that is you do this stuff organically. You at least make the attempt to do this organically, and it didn't feel like that at all. So
No, I agree. I do not disagree with any aspect of what you've said. I think that they and I have already said this statement, but this was a second movie to a different first movie.
yeah, yeah. Now, okay.
Um,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, if they were going to do the whole we're building to the Sinister Six, if that was like their whole thing, the first movie should have established some Sinister Six.
Yeah.
Like,
Which you could kind of argue that maybe in one scene they do it, but it's certainly not clear. Like you have to be
no,
eagle-eyed to catch it.
it should have been like the main villain to the first movie should have been one of the Sinister Six villains, and he should have gotten away at the end. He should
Yeah.
have been stopped, but he should have gotten away. Or he should have been put in jail, not died. And the second movie, or maybe you can wait till the third movie, but you should then have a moment where his breakout becomes a plot point.
Right. No. No. I certainly don't disagree with you there. I think I'm going to go ahead and move to some of the things that I actually liked about this movie. I know I've been clowning on it, but there were a lot of good things about this movie that like it's a movie that overall I'm not too crazy about, but it has a lot of little good moments and things that I really enjoyed about it. And the first thing that I want to praise is the acting. Honestly, I thought the acting, not just from Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, which, it goes without saying that they made this movie way better than it could have been. But I want to also praise Sally Field. I want to praise Jamie Foxx for essentially playing two characters there. I think Dane DeHaan did a good job with some of the stuff that he had. It is just unfortunate what they did to Harry in this one. And frankly, I also I don't know how much acting this was, but I liked that they're using Dennis Leary. I really he didn't say a word. He just stared at Peter and was just like, dude, come on. I felt like that was very effective. And so I have no issues with the acting. Um the Spider-Man costume. The Spider-Man costume in this movie is so good.
It
Like
is.
as much as I disliked the previous one, I like this one. This one, looks exactly like the costume from like the Ultimate Comics, and it just really kind of popped, especially in comparison to the last one. Loved it. The use of color overall was pretty good in this one. Definitely an improvement over the last one. There was more for Aunt May to do from a dramatic standpoint. I enjoyed her moments with Peter. Electro looked pretty cool, and their fights looked really cool. And then finally, I will say this about Gwen's death. Say what you will about it, and I'll probably agree with you, but it was beautifully shot. That final drop was gorgeous and haunting at the same time. And it was a beautiful send off for a beloved Spider-Man character in this movie, at least from a purely visual standpoint, you know? And I don't know. I guess I'm going to talk ahead a little bit too, because I mean, they use that exact same framing for Zendaya in, and I remember your reaction to it. Like that was basically what you said. You were like, "Oh God, they can't kill her." They framed that exactly the same way,
Yeah,
and it was funny because when you said that, I remember thinking, "I'm like, they're doing that for a reason," and then I was like, "Andrew Garfield's gonna rescue her, isn't he?" And so when that happened in the movie, and I guess that's actually a thing worth talking about here. Are there any aspects of this film that Spider-Man No Way Home redeems? And you could say that it does a lot to maybe not clean up Gwen's death is handled here, but it does give Andrew Garfield's character a really that moment. I think when we were in the movie theaters, we had Andrew showing up and people cheering, we had Toby showing up and people cheering, but honestly I think Andrew Garfield rescuing Zendaya probably got the biggest reaction out of the audience when you and I were there. Would you
I
agree?
think I would agree. I also think that the characterization changes that they made to Electro
Okay.
in No Way Home,
Mm-hmm.
um, in some way, in some ways, that was a completely different person.
Okay.
But I think he was a more interesting. For one thing, that was the Electro that we got in No Way Home was a better human being than the Electro in this movie.
I remember Kurt Connors telling him that he had something of a glow up, like all of the physical characteristics that made him look kind of goofy were cleaned up, and he looked like Jamie Foxx. And you could make the argument that he maybe got a bit of a moral glow up too.
Yeah, that was what I
You
was
know,
going to say. He didn't have the weird obsessive characteristics. He felt wronged, but he didn't feel wronged
obsessed
in as
over it.
weird a way.
Yeah.
And he was more willing to hear people.
I agree. I agree, and I also, and again, this is a tangent, but I also love that little bit of dialogue that he had with Andrew Garfield after he got depowered, and he was like, "I was thinking you'd be black." I loved that. I thought that was great. Because then we all know, like, come on, give us a live action Miles Morales, please. So
I'm sorry, I was just thinking about there was I can't remember what comic it was from, but there's a panel that I remember where Luke Cage says something to Spider-Man about being white, and Spider-Man's like, "You don't know. I could be black under here," and Luke Cage just gives him this look like, "No, you're
son,
not. And
son,
you
don't.
know, I know you're not." And so that the I thought you'd be black under there when they had that line, it immediately made me think of Luke Cage and I know you're not.
Yeah. So I guess we can move on to final thoughts and rating. So I'm just going to go ahead and give my final summation here, and then you can go ahead and give yours, and then we can do our respective tier list ratings. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So overall, this movie to me is still a difficult one to get behind. It's it is saved by virtue of the fact that it is not only a mainline Spider-Man movie, but that a lot of the crew and cast they do as much as they can with the material that is clearly given to them from people who are not visiting the set every day and don't seem to care about much else than a bottom line. people with good ideas or maybe not so good ideas that they're just like, okay, do this, and then they leave. Um, it's a film with good moments. It is also a film with a lot of narrative issues and just a lot of behind the scenes issues that I have a very difficult time getting behind. Um, I don't I don't ever regret watching this movie because I do feel like every time I watch it, I might appreciate a little bit more of it. But I also feel like I'm getting to the point where that's probably reached about as good a point as it will with me. Uh, Diane or Maenad, sorry.
I would agree in general. I think that, like I said, it has some wonderful acting, has some gorgeous cinematography.
Yes.
I will say that from my last rewatch, it is a film that deeply benefits from being watched somewhat less than entirely sober. Um,
Okay, all right. I may have had a beer on my rewatch too. Okay.
um, and that where your brain doesn't spend as much time thinking about all of the things that don't make sense. Um, I would I would say that it is probably my second least favorite live action Spider-Man film.
Okay. All right.
Um, but that's still I mean, it's certainly not as bad as I originally thought it was, which is probably
At least as far as mainline Spider-Man movies go, this one for me is probably the one I like least. It's the this is where I do the tier list rating. I think I had mentioned before that the first movie straddles the line. It was I think it straddled a B and the C, like the B and the C tiers for me, and I ended up giving it a low B essentially. This one, the sequel, I'm sorry to say, this one straddles the C and D tiers for me, and I think because of some of the good moments in it, that saves it from the D tier listing. But even if I give it a C tier rating, it would be a low C. That's my final assessment as of now. So
the only reason this isn't my least favorite of the mainline Spider-Man ones is because I really did not like the third Tobey Maguire film.
that's fair.
There were moments, and that may just be my resistance to awkwardness.
Okay, that's understandable. And I know that I know that there's a camp of Spider fans that are definitely going to agree with you too. Um, I think I've already reviewed that one, although I may come back eventually and do those again because I think the first three Spider-Man movies I did those reviews by myself. And so like I might just try and do those with a guest at sometime in the future, but that's going to be well after the big Spider-Man movies tier list episode that I do after we've reviewed all the ones out there, including Morbius. So
And nothing so far. This movie is definitely better than Morbius.
wow. All right. I always enjoy getting to talk about these. Actually, Mina, did you have a tier list rating for this one? Did we get one?
I don't think I've been doing those.
Oh,
I think I would also place it at a C tier.
okay.
I just have, like I said, I just would have placed another one lower.
Okay, that's fair. That is completely fair. I always enjoy getting to talk about these movies with friends. So again, I want to thank Maynard and And again, Aaron was going to be here, but real life kind of intervened on him. So, but I want to thank Maynard for being here to discuss the Amazing Spider-Man 2 with me in this episode. Much thanks. I really do appreciate your perspectives on these things. Do you have anything that you'd like to promote? Any socials or projects that you're working on or anything? You said last time that maybe you'd get get a social media account or something. So
Not yet.
no, it's all right. It's okay.
Um,
Hey,
I, I
you're here.
still pretty much live on Tumblr, and
Okay.
it's not a terribly active Tumblr at the moment.
Okay. That's fair. Hey, you know what? We've all got bills to pay, and I totally understand it. So, all right. So thank you for listening, and now let's move on to the Web Spinners recommendations segment of the show. All right. Mina, do you remember this part, right?
Hmm.
Piece of media. Okay, excellent. All right. So I'm actually excited for this one. I don't know. I like doing these recommendations, but I've been watching something new that I've really been enjoying. So for this week's Web Spinners recommendation, I'd like to recommend Percy Jackson and the Olympians, currently on Disney Plus. And if you value your mental health and you like this show, please do not go to its Reddit, okay? Because after being on its subreddit, I feel like I might be the only person that is really enjoying this show. This show, in its first season, which is very nearly over, is essentially an adaptation of the book The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. And that series of books had 5 volumes. And I'm hoping that they get 5 seasons because I have loved and adored everything that they have done with the story, with the characters, and I'm just enjoying the ride essentially. And again, if you go onto that subreddit, people are like, "Oh, this isn't any good," and why would they make these decisions? I don't like this. I don't like that. I'm just grateful that this got made because the movie that came out, I think in 2010, I was really disappointed in. And I think they made a second movie and I never saw it. But I like this serialized format. I like the fact that they are using actors who are the same age as the characters from the books instead of aging them up like they did in the movies. And you know, I love Greek mythology adventures, and that's what this is. Percy has been accused of he first of all he's finding out that he's a demigod, and he's been accused of stealing Zeus's lightning bolt, and he has to go on a quest with his friends Grover and Annabeth to figure out what actually is going on since he don't have no lightning bolt. And so it's an adventure and it's a lot of fun, and I definitely would recommend it if you like adventure, if you like Greek mythology. The only issue that I occasionally have with the show is that some of the famous faces that show up, I'm just kind of like, why? Like what purpose are they serving other than to have their famous face there? Like Maenad, or you're not watching the show, are you? Okay. So at one point, actually at more than one point, Lin Manuel Miranda shows up, and that's awesome. I like him, but he doesn't really do much, and it's like I see this guy and I want him to do a poem or a rap or a song or something. He's just kind of there, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it does kind of make me go, what was the point of doing this stunt casting? But aside from that, the adventure is great. I think the kids doing the acting are wonderful. We've seen very cool interpretations of Medusa and Cerberus, the three-headed dog.
Kerberos.
I Kerberos. Okay. And
Greek does not have a soft C.
that's true, but then that makes so much more of it difficult to pronounce. But you do make a good point. They have S's. No, I'm just kidding. And I will say this: I did like the stunt cast for Dionysus. I don't. I know you're big into Dionysus, Maenad, but uh, and so I don't know what you'll feel about this, but I was amused by the stunt cast that they had for Dionysus, and I'll just leave it at that. So
The reason I have
enjoyable.
not watched
Oh,
it,
go ahead. Mhm.
the reason I haven't watched it, and the reason that I haven't read the books is, I mean, with my name being Maenad, it is obvious that I have strong feelings where Dionysus is concerned.
Yes.
And I feel like Rick Riordan did Dionysus really, really, really dirty in these books. Um, for somebody who, in Greek mythology, is the deity that likes humans the most, that is the most compassionate towards humans,
Mhm.
that cares the most about humanity of all the gods, with the possible exception of Prometheus. I think the characterization that they give Dionysus of being an angry, um, somewhat petty, dry drunk is viciously wrong.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. But again, I enjoy them. I think you guys should give it a look. And yeah, Maynard, what recommendations do you have this week for my listeners to read, watch, play, or listen to?
Well, at the moment, I have been reading a series by Drew Hayes
Mm-hmm.
that starts with the book Forging Hephaestus, which, despite the name, is not really much related to Greek mythology. It is a book about supervillains who the main character is kind of starting out on a supervillain career. And
Okay.
there is basically an organization of supervillains that has something of a set of a truce and a set of rules with the superheroes that basically says these are the lines we don't cross.
Mm-hmm.
We will make sure even our villains do not cross these very particular lines. And it's things like going after going after each other's families. Heroes and villains both don't do that.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
and there's a few other like small rules. Um, and there are moments where, like, if it's a sufficiently world destroying thing, um, possibly heroes villains might even work with the heroes because, you know, I don't want to destroy the world. I'm one of the idiots that lives in it.
Right.
Um, and so it's a lot of good, like, anti-hero kind of things. There's heroes and villains being friends in their civilian identities and trying to, and some of them do or don't know that they are friends, and balancing that. And so it's a very fun set of superhero novels. Drew Hayes is an author that I like in general, and he's written a couple of other superhero series. So if you want to get your superheroes in novel form and you like anti-heroes, anti-villains kind of characters, it's a really good series.
And this is Drew Hayes. What is the name of the series?
The first book is Forging Hephaestus, and I'm trying to remember what the actual name of the series is. Let me
Oh,
take a
we'll just
look.
go ahead. We'll just go ahead and go with the title of the book and leave it at that for now. So
Yeah. Villain's
okay,
Code. That's the name of the series.
Villain's Code. Okay, all right, cool. Okay, well, thank you for the recommendation, and I believe that brings us close to the end of the show. My cat is still behind me. She just like stretched against me. It was funny. All right. If you enjoyed this episode of The Webline, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube channel, simply named Spidey Librarian, where I also maintain a playlist of all podcast episodes. The Webline is also available on audio services, so when you see us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or another such service, please leave a review, rating, and where possible, follow us as well. You can find me on my socials under the name Spidey Librarian on Threads, Twitter/X, or Twixter as I'm now calling it, Instagram, Facebook, WordPress, and Twitch. Finally, if you'd like to shoot me an email, you can contact me at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, where I'll be happy to hear your thoughts, rants, and ideas. You never know, your email just might be featured in an upcoming episode. Next Sunday, February 4th, will be another character spotlight episode. As we start to close in on the Valentine's Day holiday, I will be joined by previous guests Jaleh Najafali and Michael Greenhale to talk about the arguable love of Peter Parker's life, the unforgettable Mary Jane Watson, or is it more accurate to simply refer to her as MJ now? What will our assembled panel like most and least about the various incarnations of this character? You'll have to join us live next Sunday, February 4th, to find out. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode, we'll be wishing you a good day. Bye.